Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1785 AN. Today's date is February 6th, 2019, and the title of the episode is Central Bank Controlled, World Bank Controlled, Globalist System Ripped Apart, Next Boom Coming Soon. Now, before I get started, I want you to take a look at this. This is a coin that everyone is raving about. It's a Morgan silver dollar, a runaway success in its day and about to do the same now. It's the superstar of the collectible world. One sold for $587,500 not so long ago. Once you start and get the collecting bug, you'll be dreaming of these in your sleep. Discover the thrill, pleasure, and joy of unearthing these rare coins. Noble Gold can start you off with one of their specially selected collector's choice coins. Take the first steps to a lucrative and absorbing hobby and go to historicsilvercoins.com and save $5 per coin by using the code X22 today. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, we can see that we are moving forward with the plan. And we've been talking about this plan and how Trump needs to control the Federal Reserve. I do believe since Trump had lunch with Powell, and of course Powell came out and made that statement that they're independent, they can't be swayed by politicians, that was the signal to let everyone know that Trump is in control of them. He did this on purpose to show the mainstream media and the rest of the world that they lowered the rates because it was for the good of the country. But remember, the deep state, they had a different plan. They were pushing a recession, depression in 2020. And we can see that Trump just shut them down. So right now, we can see that Trump and Powell definitely working together. They are in control. We also see that Trump has ripped apart all the globalist trade deals and created new bilateral trade agreements. Now, we know that TPP, that was gone when he first came in. We know that he's been pointing the finger at the World Trade Organization. And remember, all these World Trade Organizations, these world banks, the IMF, and all the rest, this is all part of the globalist central bank system. They need to be ripped apart. This is part of the swamp. The swamp is just not those individuals that committed treason, crimes against the country. This has to do with the swamp that has destroyed the livings, the lives of many people. This is much, much bigger than just a couple of arrests. This is about resetting the entire system from the government all the way to the central bank. And we can see that Trump is controlling the Fed, controlling the trade deals, controlling the World Bank now, which we'll get into in a minute. We discussed it yesterday. And he's ready to move to the next phase. Now, Trump gave the State of the Union yesterday, and he started out with the economy, that we've never seen an economy like this before. Everything is going the way we planned. He's letting us know that everything is on track. Manufacturing is coming back to the country. Jobs will be coming back to the country. Businesses will be coming back to the country. Now, why is he saying this? He's saying this because the globalists, the central bankers, have been moving jobs, companies, manufacturing out of the country. He's letting us know they're all coming back. And he's preparing the country for the next economic system. Meanwhile, what's happening around the world, well, everything's falling apart. Remember, the central banks, they are exposed right now. Think about what they were trying to do here. Let's talk about before Trump here. The central bankers around the world, the Rothschilds, they knew that their system, at a certain point, it implodes because the world cannot sustain the debt. This is a fact. The amount of people working, the amount of tax dollars coming in, cannot support the interest payments on the debt. It's one of the reasons why they lowered the interest rates to zero or to the negative area, because this was the only way they can keep the system running and making it look like everything was great. Meanwhile, they had to create a lot of currency at the same exact time to make sure that people realized that they're not the cause of the entire global economic system falling, imploding on itself. They really did believe that they would have this event to cover everything up. Trump, he just stopped all this. How did he do that? How did he put the central banking system into the spotlight? Well, all he did was he stopped the interest rates from increasing. He called out the Fed over and over. He did two things while he was doing this. He made sure the world knew and understood that every time the Federal Reserve raised the rates, they were responsible for hurting the economy. Number two, by stopping the Fed from raising rates, it puts the spotlight on the central bankers. Why? It puts the spotlight on them because he is showing how the central bank system will be ripped apart without anyone doing anything, without an event. He's showing the world who they really are and what they were really about and what the real economy was. Now, he stopped the recession, the depression right now. He had to do this because they were planning on bringing it down in 2020. He also showed that he has complete and utter control of the central banking system. But you can see around Europe, Japan, and the rest of the world, it's all falling apart. And guess what? The central bankers, they really can't do anything about it because they were hoping, they were praying that the Federal Reserve would raise those rates and bring the system down, and it would be blamed on Trump. Or if Trump wasn't there, we'd have a war. None of this is happening. So if you look out in Germany, you can see that Germany factory orders, they plunged the most since 2012. The economy hit the wall there. They saw a 1.6% drop in December, and year to date, it's 7% that their factory orders have declined. This is the 7th consecutive month in a row that factory orders have declined. So the data that was released shows that Europe's largest economy has gone from bad to worse. This is what it looks like when a central bank system completely falls apart. And it had nothing to do with the Brexit, by the way. I know the EU, the central bankers, the deep state, the elite, they're pointing at the Brexit. They're going to destroy. This has nothing to do with the Brexit. If you look around Europe, you can see that most of these countries, they're in trouble. They've taken on a lot of debt. A lot of people are unemployed. A lot of people are unhappy. This is why we see the yellow vests out there. Now, Trump, he is in the process of taking control of the entire economy here in the United States and around the world. Now, he's not doing it alone. He does have help from Putin and Xi Jinping. I do believe they are working together to rout out the deep state in all these countries. Remember, the deep state is just not here in the United States. It's around the world. And they had very, very different plans. In the deep state, they work with the central bankers, the elite. They're all part of the same bad system. So Trump, which we discussed yesterday, he was able to nominate someone to head up the World Bank. Now remember, the previous head of the World Bank decided to get out. He was appointed by Obama. Now everything has changed. Yesterday we mentioned that it was going to be David Malpass. Well, it turns out that yes, David Malpass, he is the person he nominated. He's a 62-year-old Treasury Undersecretary, and Trump said the following: "I am certain there could be no better candidate to lead the World Bank than David. My administration has made it a top priority to ensure that the U.S. taxpayer dollars are spent effectively and wisely," he noted. And David has been a strong advocate for accountability at the World Bank for a long time. So what we're seeing here is that Trump now is in control of the World Bank. Trump is now in control of the globalist trade deals. Trump is now in control of the Federal Reserve. Trump is controlling the fate of the central bankers. This is why the central bankers put out that article a while ago where they were afraid that their independence would be called into question, that politicians, the people, I should really say, would start to dictate what the central bank should do. Remember, the central bank, they're not part of any nation. They could care less about a nation. They could care less about the people. They care about themselves. They pretend to care to make you think they're on your side. But everything that they're doing in the background is not to help the everyday person. If it was to help the everyday person, they would create the currency and they wouldn't attach any interest to it, where the people of the country had to pay this back. And the only way to pay it back is to push taxes on the people. If they were truly for whatever country they're in, they would create the currency and help the people. If we look at the Federal Reserve, they create the currency, they attach interest to it, the government borrows it. We're not allowed to audit what the Federal Reserve does. Does this sound like a corporation that's for the people? Remember, it's not part of the government. And why do they have to be a corporation separate and apart from the government? I mean, I know the answer. We all know the answer. I'm not asking the question. If they were truly for we the people, they would do what the founding fathers wanted. They wanted we the people to coin, to create our own currency. And if we did create the currency, we wouldn't add interest onto it. We'd create the currency, and the government wouldn't have to borrow it. The central banks, they are not for the people. They never were. They are for themselves. Their allegiance is to themselves. And we can see this is why the central bankers are so worried. This is why the Rothschilds are so worried. This is why the IMF leaders are worried, because they realize when the next crisis hits, the central bank, the Federal Reserve that has a reserve currency around the world, they're not going to bail out any other private Western central bank. Remember, all these private Western central banks, they all hook into the Rothschild system. They depend on the reserve currency central bank to bail them out when they're in trouble. This time, it's not going to happen. Who controls the central bank now? Who's going to restructure the central bank? Trump and the Patriots. The central bankers, they are doomed, and they know it. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.